Do you mean pass over to me?
Yeah, sorry, pass over to you, Herdy.
Yeah, yeah, excellent. Okay, so I didn't. Well, I've got two aspects that I want to discuss. I'll talk a little bit about um, myself and the business. I think that's quite important. And then I'll also talk about how important it is that you're actually doing what you're doing. Because when I was starting my career in digital marketing, and I hate using that term because I prefer to use the term performance marketing. And when I started my career in performance marketing, there wasn't, I would say, a plethora of available content. There wasn't a sort of an industry to be able to jump straight into. But when I first started, it was a case of we did very much organic activity first. I'll go into that in detail, but it was very, very young. And you actually got a lot more bang for your buck back then too. And then I've actually got a little bit of something just to go over with you. So I actually cleared this with one of my clients. So I've got a client called Sports Direct. You might have heard of them. And we run the paid social ads for them. And specifically, we do activity for one of their brands that they own called Everlast, which is sort of like a boxing brand, a gym wear, an athlete brand. And I'll take you through what our decks lead to in terms of closing the sale. And my big thing that I always say to everybody is decks lead to checks. So as long as you have a really strong, compelling, you have two decks, great. Is that for that question or are you on about something else? Might be late. I want to say great. Oh, don't know. I'm just catching up with all these comments here anyway, so I'll just crack on. So the big thing that I want to show you is how we sort of pitch for business and how we sort of show strategy as well. So I'll go a little bit of detail about me, but I'm not going to go into it too much because it's quite boring, and I'll show you the other stuff. So cut a long story short, did management and marketing at uni. And then from uni, I got an internship with a finance group called JP Morgan based in China, in Beijing. So I was there for about 8 months, and that's when I first started dip my toe in the water to digital marketing. And at the time, it was digital marketing. And my role was essentially to tell people that weren't from China, so weren't Chinese nationals, about what we do, about the fact that we own a few different hotels, that we own like tourist apartments and commercial apartments for people that are coming for business. And the way that I was able to speak to these consumers was through Facebook, TripAdvisor, MySpace at the time, if any of you remember what that is, and then also a range of different other channels. And it was quite important because a lot of the stuff at the time was banned in China. It is banned now, but at the time it wasn't. And that was the period where we were doing ads where we would spend maybe, 10, £15 on a post and we would reach millions and we would get, a return on investment that would just be like 6, 7 times that. So at the time, the algorithm that Facebook was putting out, and we're talking about maybe 16 years ago when I first started, the algorithm that we were putting out there was very much about communication and community. Now, the algorithm right now, from an organic point of view, and please just stop me because if there's any questions, Georgia, I'll let you just let me pause me if there are any questions. Now, the algorithm right now is very much on short form content, less than 20 seconds, reels, TikTok-esque, that kind of thing, from an organic perspective. And organic meaning everything that we own. So obviously, the three key pillars of marketing communications: owned, earned, and paid. And so the owned aspect, when we're looking at our organic side of things, and the algorithm is very much about content that is short, content that is visual, and content that can work really well on stories or reels. So if any of you have got a business, or if you wish to invest in a business and help it, or look at areas where you can get the most exposure, my recommendation would be to be able to start on looking at short form video content, shot in portrait. Yeah. So shot via your phone. The more native it is, the better it is. And you'll start to see this with a lot of these bigger brands where, and we'll show you this in a moment, but you'll start to see a lot about how native content rough around the edges is doing a lot more to drive conversion than these polished campaigns that you start to see now. And the biggest thing is when you look at how people consume media through Twitter and TikTok. The bigger brands are now starting to do a lot more with more native platforms. Anyway, fast forward, internship done, and I came to Manchester, back home, and then I just started working in agencies. So I've worked my way from, junior entry level to my last job before I started the Fruits was a board member of a company called the Protein Works, where my role was essentially head of social, head of paid social. And I ran that for I was in that role for about 3 years. And during that period, it was also lockdown and the Corona pandemic. And it was one of the few industries that did really well in that period. So you can imagine an industry that's doing really well, where we're not allowed to leave, means that I was just doing 10, 12-hour days a lot. Everybody wanted to keep fit. Everyone wanted to exercise, so protein, multivitamins, anything to do with that industry or paradigm were seeing crazy figures. And one of the issues that you found is a lot of entry-level businesses took advantage of that, and they actually forecasted wrong. So they took the current forecast of what the sales they were seeing, and then were actually able to maximize all the new supply chains that they've created because they thought that lockdown was going to be, you build on top of that. But actually what we found is we saw really good conversion and demand for certain industries. And then straight after lockdown, it dropped. So a very important aspect to understand that whenever you do a forecast as well, you should never look at your current year. You should always look at as much as possible historic data and then plan your forecast. And the beauty of a forecast is that you should try to not make massive commercial changes based on a forecast. You should base it off your current sales of quarterly, if you can, simply because things can change so much. So that period of where I've come from is done, and then I started the Fruits. So the Fruits essentially just started with me as a freelancer, and then eventually it grew to a team of 5. So it's me and 4 other people that work within the company as well. So my business partner, Dan, who manages everything to do with Google, Bing, I paid search, and I and my team handle everything to do with paid social. So that's your 5 main platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Pinterest, and TikTok. And we do everything to do with ads and content for those platforms. Now, one of the things that we do that's quite unique to other agencies is that we're specifically KPI driven. And by that, I mean, we work towards a goal. And if we don't hit that goal, we don't get paid. So it's one of those things where it's very good to be able to clinch clients, because clients like the idea that you're working towards a goal that we've all agreed, but they also like the idea that they don't have to just keep paying somebody who's not doing their job. And that's one of the things that I fell out of love with the agency world, which is you'll find there's a lot of wastage internally when you work with bigger brands. When I used to work in agencies, you'll find that you don't get a chance to be able to put as much of the time as you want on certain brands. You sort of have to get the job done, go into another one. And I didn't really like that, because I didn't like the idea of not being able to see something that you develop and grow. Hence why the agency is called The Fruits, because we're all about healthy growth. And that's the main reason why we do what we do. The kind of clients that we work with are mainly entrepreneurial, barring some of the bigger brands. But majority of our clients the owners work directly with us. So our entire agency is built on WhatsApp. So all our communication is done via WhatsApp. So we have obviously staff phones, etc., WhatsApp businesses, but this is the sort of the market that we're in. All our entrepreneurs, all of these business owners, they run their businesses all through WhatsApp. We don't really use Slack as much anymore, so you get all these different communication platforms. But the biggest thing that we try to do is to work into the same space as our clients do. And that's a big thing about being able to win business in the future as well. In terms of like an advice really quickly, I don't want people to think that agencies are all doom and gloom. I'd recommend everybody, if you want to start your career, in marketing to work for an agency. I would, and this may get you into a bit of hot water, but I would resist the urge to be able to work in an in-house brand. Now, the reason why I say that is as part of an agency, you are going to be thrown into the deep end a little bit, but also you'll have the opportunity to take advantage of a number of different skill sets all around you. So although I have a specialism in paid social, I have a really strong knowledge of pretty much every aspect of digital marketing, so much so that I'll probably be able to manage people that have been doing paid search for a number of years, technical SEO, organic SEO, content. And the reason why I've had that is because I've been able to work in agencies for about 10 years and learning from other thought leaders and people that are their own specialism in that area. So that's one of the benefits of an agency. Personally, I would look at going to an agency that's about 25 to 30 people strong. And the reason for that is if you get higher than that, you'll start to see a limit on how much you can interact with other members of the team. Any lower than that, then it won't attract the big players. So I think 25 to 30s, if you can, if you're serious about it, and imagine that you are, because that's why you're here, try to get yourself involved with an agency that's got 25 to 30 people within that. And don't be worried about what type of industries they work in, what type of goals they work with. Just get yourself stuck into people that know what they're talking about and can put their money where their mouth is. Okay, so back to what we're talking about from the fruits. The reason why I don't like the word digital marketing as much is I think it doesn't really tell people what it is we do. And I always try to, think about an elevator pitch. So whenever I'm speaking to my team, I always try to think that whatever you're trying to explain, you need to try to explain it in less than 15 seconds with using the most simple words as possible. I think it was Einstein that said that true intelligence is explaining really complicated things in very simple words. And that's the way that we like to do things. One of the issues that we have with other agencies is that you use a lot of buzzwords, use a lot of numbers, but you don't really get into the nitty gritty. And at the end of the day, all my clients care about one thing, and that's cash, and that's it. So whatever we do, as long as it creates revenue, profit, and growth for our brand, then it doesn't matter. I have a client, he owns a vitamins company called Star Power, and they turn over about £350,000 a month. And he will call me at random periods of the week, and the call will last about 2 minutes. 2 minutes. And all he'll say is, "Hi, Herd, how you doing?" I said, "Yeah, I'm good. Talk to me. What's our spend? What's our profit?" That's all I tell him. I'll never hear from him for another 2 weeks. And it will be literally that quick. It'll be literally 10-second call. Exactly. And the next thing that we have is another client. And they're a shoe brand called Lanks, based in Lancashire. They make their own shoes. And that's the complete opposite. Called Marco, great guy. And he wants regular calls. And we go through the entire plethora of what we're doing, what our creative looks like. I'll take you through a few creative examples. Good. Yeah, I hope you bought it for one of my ads. So, and if you see it again, make sure you do. And Marco's the opposite. He's the creative, loves. All right, well, if you buy another one, I'll gift you another pair. So, so Marco's the opposite. So I'm glad you were gifted him, but Marco's the opposite. He starts from the bottom to the up. So that should give you a good indication of the kind of brand that it is. So every shoe that Lanks sells, Marco's is the owner, has gone through top to bottom, from the sole to the tongue on each shoe, and he does the same thing with our performance. Now, the reason why I'm giving you this example is to tell you that there are clients that work in so many different ways, and the whole point of being able to be good at what you do or like what you do is being able to not be rigid. And that's why I don't like the word digital marketing, because I feel like it's quite a rigid explanation of what we actually do. There are so many avenues to digital marketing, and our specific type of marketing is performance marketing. And I would define performance marketing as activities geared towards commercial interest. And that's what performance marketing is. So we have, activities where if I was to recruit somebody from this call right now, we'd be looking at a number of things from soft skills to hard skills. And the hard skills we don't really care about as much. We can teach you that. It's the soft skills, the things that we can't teach you, i.e., confidence, speaking in front of people, being able to articulate your thoughts, planning your time, loyalty, being proud of what you do. All these different aspects you can't teach. Yeah, we don't worry too much about if you're good at the platform, if you're good at numbers. Numbers helps, don't get me wrong, but that's not what we look for. So when in the jobs that we do, you need to have a creative mindset and you have to have a numbers mindset. You need to look at the numbers and you need to then be able to understand what they're telling you. Similar to if anyone's seen the film The Matrix, seen all the code around what you're doing and being able to analyze that and make business decisions. The biggest thing that why we get paid what we get paid is because we make decisions for clients and clients love it. Even if you make a bad decision, clients love the fact that you're making a decision. What they don't want to hear, and that's for anyone in any role, whatever it may be, nobody wants to hear, what do you think I should do? Yeah. They need to hear, this is what I'm going to do. Let's see what happens in any walk of life. Yeah. So if you're in a role, if you want to start moving upwards, you're never going to get pushed upwards if you're going to ask people what to do. It doesn't matter. I prefer a test and learn approach, exactly. Fall fast, get up quicker. That's the main thing that we always try to do. So whenever you're making a mistake, get it over with. Do it quick, make the mistake, and then you can learn from it. Because that's the big thing. I'm just a product of all the mistakes that I've made in the last 10 years. And there've been loads. Enough to, make you think, oh, I'm actually decent at this job. And you do that, you wake up and you think, maybe I should give it in, but you need to look at the magnitude of the mistake as opposed to looking at the magnitude of how good you are. The bigger the mistake you're making, the more in the direction that you're going. So that's one thing that you want to keep in mind. But again, I digress, which is a common motif when I'm speaking. But when we're looking at performance marketing as a whole, what I'm looking for is individuals that can able to interpret data and then take that data and make decisions with it. An example of that would be, let's say we're running activity for January right now. So I've got a company called Pursue Fitness, and they're a gymwear brand, and they predominantly do gym activity for females and males. 80% of our sales are females. Now, one aspect of what we're doing is, there you go. Yeah, it seems like that a lot of the brands that we work with, which is good. And it's not every day that I get to speak to people about that are in this space. So it's quite nice to see that brands that. Now, one of the things that we do with Pursue Fitness is we take the data from I'm going to throw some terms away from like click-through rate data, CPC data, ROAS, stuff like that. And we use that to then brief out Pursue Fitness's creative teams. So we take all that data that we look at. So we say, right, we've got 5 bits of creative running at this one audience. Audience A has got 5 bits of creative. And the creative could be a video, could be an image, could be, a carousel that you scroll over, could have a UGC, so user generated content, could be campaign. And we take that data, test it, and then use that to then not only pause the ineffective ads, but then use that to then brief out further ads. That's one aspect of taking data and being able to do something creative with it as well. So the other aspect of it is that one thing that you want to keep in mind is when it comes to performance is attribution models. Now, I'm not sure if anyone has covered what attribution models are or anything like that, but attribution models are essentially the way that we can tell how well something is doing based on the platform. And let me give you a bit of an example. Every platform we run ads at, so let's say Google and Facebook, they have their own model to show how well something's doing. And by that I mean it has a piece of an equation or a piece of code that it enables us to see that this ad has made certain sales. Now, the most common attribution model that these platforms use is called the last click. attribution model. And this is very advanced stuff, but I'm just conscious of the time. So I think you need to get the best out of what we've got. This is very advanced, but I'd definitely make a note of this, because you start spitting some of these facts at some job roles, they're going to walk you straight into the VIP area. All right. So an attribution model specifically is how a platform determines if an ad gets a sale or not. And the most common attribution model that platforms use is called a last click attribution model, a last click. And what that basically means is whatever is the last touch point from the consumer before they buy will get credit for being responsible for that purchase. So let me give you a word example of that. Let's say person A clicks on a Facebook ad, they go onto the website, they like what they see, but they don't buy straight away. Then they, a few days later, they Google the brand name and they go on to buy. Google will take all the credit of that, and it will say, hey, I was the one that was responsible for that, because that's the person that they converted with it last. But every platform takes its own sort of weight when it comes into who's doing best. So Facebook will say, oh, actually, it was me who did it. And then Google will say, no, it was me. So to sort of combat that problem, we have a range of reporting platforms that most clients use. And I'm sure you've heard of this before, but the most common one is Google Analytics. So the most important platform for any performance marketer is Google Analytics, or GA4. Now, Google Analytics 4. Now, Google Analytics is essentially a platform that gives you commercial information based on site behavior and customer demography to determine how well all the channels that you have in your marketing mix are doing. And channels being Facebook, Google, email, organic social, YouTube, all these different channels. Now, the problem that you have with Google Analytics is that it uses the most archaic form of attribution model to determine which channel gets the credit for the purchase, which is the last click. And last click, the reason why I think it's very archaic and very old is nobody converts in the way that we've just described. Nobody clicks on an ad and then straight away goes to buy. There is a period, they're called micro moments. There is a period within this purchase journey where there are so many different touch points. So using a last touch point attribution model is very archaic. And if you're working for a big brand, majority of my job used to be to convince financial controllers to not pull the plug on paid social, because social does not get represented really well on a last click model. As you can imagine, whenever you're going through your Instagrams or your Facebook feeds or your TikToks, you see ads in between your feeds and your stories. You may not engage with them, but they plant something in your head. And then later on, you may go and Google them. You may go and search for them directly, or you may see a billboard, or you might see an email from them, and then you go to spark interest and buy. Now, that's why a last touch point doesn't work, because it doesn't take any of that into control or to consideration. So what we're now starting to see is platforms like Triple Whale. Now, that's a very new platform. It's about 2 years old, and it's a reporting platform that we use across all our clients. So we take the cost of that and pass it on, pass the value on to our clients because of how important it is. And the reason why it's important is because they've actually created their own patented attribution model, which takes into consideration all of the touch points. So it takes into consideration 3 pieces of data: first party data, second party data, and third party data. Now, first party data is something that Triple Whale uses. When you convert from a website, you may sometimes see a little pop-up that says, how did you find us? If you do see that whenever you're buying off somebody, that means that that website is using Triple Whale to be able to understand how well their ads are doing. So that's first party data. Second party data is cookies. So whenever somebody lands on your website and they give you a cookie. And then third party data is using website browsing behavior. So they take all these aspects of your data and they determine whether or not which channel has played a key part in your role. So we started to use platforms like this to actually make our business decisions. So we've been able to go from ad spends of like 50 to 60K a month to like 170K a month, making financial decisions based off triple whale. So in a nutshell, that's sort of where the climate is at the moment when it comes to those that are really smashing performance marketing. And thankfully, there's not a lot of people doing that. So it's dead easy for me to get in front of a client and tell them all this. Because at the moment, agencies are still very much based on using the old traditional models of working. And that's another issue when you have big agencies. The issue being that innovation isn't easily passed through when there's lots of people involved in the decision making. So we have a very lean hierarchy. And by that, I mean, we're not going to increase the size of our employees by 300-400%. That's not what we're going to do. The plan here is to have 5 staff members, and each one of those staff members will get a Class A share of the business. And for those that don't know Class A, Class B shares of the business are when, if a private company is then floated in the market and it's sold, then whoever's got a Class B share will get a piece of the pie. A Class A share is that, but also they'll get a share of a dividend at the end of the year, which is essentially the profits of the business. And that's the way we want to work. So we partner with 5 or 6 staff members from the team that have shown that they'll be a part of something big, and we give them Class A shares. And that's all we're going to do. And that's it. And we don't increase our staff turnover size or anything like that. We stay the same. But then what we do is we work with clients that are in it for the long run too. So clients that want to see growth. So we're very fortunate that the clients that we work with, we've been with them for 2 years, 2-3 years, clients that I've had from like freelance to bring them forward. And we're very, very conscious about making sure who we work with. So we have an ICP, so an ideal customer profile, meaning we want to work with brands that fit to our cultural side of things, but also more importantly, show that we can actually make a good job of it. So I had a pitch yesterday. I was invited to speak with a car insurance company. And after having a conversation, we actually turned them down because we just don't think we're able to do them a good job. And that's another thing. Sometimes you need to be able to walk away from the projects that, although they look good, we want to be able to just show the best job we can do. And that's another piece of advice that I wish somebody gave me. In fact, one of my best managers always used to say is that you impress people by doing the quality of work, not necessarily the quantity of work. So when I'm recruiting people, I don't care if you can get your to-do list done really quickly, but I do care if you do a quarter of your to-do list better than I could. And that's the main thing. Don't be in a rush to get things done quickly. And because again, doing something quick leads to mistakes as well. So I think I've just gone up to, yeah, you can tell how many meetings I've done because I haven't looked at the time and I can tell it's already 2:30. So I'm pretty much done the halfway point of going through the fruit stuff. I know there's a few questions there, so I don't know, George, should I go through some questions now on this bit or go on to, I was just going to show you a little bit about how we create decks for Sports Direct.
What tends to flow quite nicely is if you do everything that you want to discuss and then any questions we do at the end, because you might answer.
Okay, sweet.
Along.
Sounds good. So what I'm going to show you now, as I told you, decks lead to checks. All right, remember that. If you can orchestrate your thoughts on a slide or a deck, have something visual, you're on the way to nirvana, to stardom, stairway to heaven. And what I don't want, and I'm going to show you in a minute, I do not want text on a slide. If you put text on a slide, go away. Yeah. A slide or a deck should be 90% of you talking and 10% of you is accompanying what you're saying and backing up about what you're saying. So what you don't want a client to do whenever you're doing it, or a client or a job interview or anything where you have to have something prepared, you do not want them reading off a screen. You're presenting yourself. You want to be 100% eye contact, speaking to them directly, and then you can point to your deck and use it as a tool to further your point. But what you shouldn't have is, like, say, for example, if I turn the camera, you shouldn't be having them looking at that screen over there. All eyes should be fixed on you. And that comes from practice. It comes from presentation skills. But let me show you now. Do I have access to share? Yes, I do. So let me show you. I think this might be it. All right, let's see. And obviously this is the part where I tell you that I have to quit Zoom and come back on again. And everything that I've just said has just gone to is gone to deaf ears now, hasn't it? So give me 1 minute. I have to leave and come back again, and I'll be right there.
Yeah, sure, no worries.
It's an interesting few questions regarding if the agency specializes in kind of one area or if it has multiple ones. Because again, when it comes to attribution, I always find if you're working with an agency that only focuses on one channel, obviously they're going to be saying that our channel is performing the best and this is the reason for the sales. So that must be a tough one to do. But if you're working with an agency who's willing to cover PPC, paid social, and something else, when they've got more channels to kind of push
I think everyone thinks their specialist area is like the best one.
Yeah.
I often see people arguing about what's more effective out of PPC and SEO. So I think everyone just thinks that their way works the best. So yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of internal conflict between marketers at times.
You know what? It's a good point. Before I go on to that, so to jump in straight away, that's one of the things that I said to a client the other day, which was, and 9 times out of 10, whenever you have an agency or somebody who can do ads, they're always going to tell you that they will do a better job. They have to. If they don't do that, they haven't got confidence in themselves. So you have to back yourself. Because if you don't back yourself, then you don't believe in the faith of your product. That's why the way that our model works isn't based on how well we do a job. It's based on KPI. So it doesn't matter if we do, we need to be conscious that I don't swear. It doesn't matter if you are good at what you do, or it doesn't matter if you're not good at what you do, or if you're poor or bad at what you do. If you hit a KPI, it doesn't matter how you do it. I could be, I have clients that don't care if I spend 10 minutes in their accounts in a month, as long as I get their KPI. That's why performance marketing is such an important aspect, because there's always going to be somebody who says that my way is the highway, or the way that I do things is very unique, or the way that we do things is revolutionary, innovative. But the whole point of our model and why we win so much business comparison to other agencies is we don't really care how we do it, but what makes you happy? What is going to make you smile at the end of your financial year? And if they give us a number and we think, actually, come on, mate, yeah, let's be realistic, and we come along with it, and we can fix that, then that's fine. And I think that's an important thing, is because the beauty of performance marketing as well is, and that's another aspect of it, is that you have to be doing every channel in order to succeed. And each channel interacts with one another and supports. For example, if you're doing paid search only, the chances are that you're not able to take advantage of your brand searches because you're not doing paid social. If you're only doing paid social, your chances are you're not taking advantage of the people that are Googling your brand. If you're only doing paid social and paid search, you're not doing anything for your organic SEO, the chances are you're missing out on organic traffic of people that have got cookies no longer active, or people that don't use Google as much. So you have to be using the entire marketing performance mix in order to succeed. Otherwise, you're just losing out on revenue. So I'm going to try this again, and thankfully it's going to work. So what I'm going to show you now, just to give you for context, this is essentially how we do decks. It's a very short deck, but it'll give you a bit of an understanding of how we deliver information, essentially, to a client. So this isn't much a pitch. I could talk about the pitch process later on, but this is more about how we deliver information. All right. And it's, again, I defined it's nothing that is nothing that's been reinvented or completely revolutionary. So let me just see. Can you just confirm that you can see that? Yeah, cheers, mate. So Sports Direct boxing, and I always basically like to start any deck with an essential key takeaway. So the chances are that your client's probably going to remember your first slide and your last slide, and everything else in between, they're just going to think about what they felt when you were speaking. So keep that in mind. So it doesn't matter what they read off the deck, if they feel bored, if they feel disengaged, if they feel that you're not a professional, if they feel that you don't know what you're talking about, it doesn't matter what you've got on the deck, that feeling won't go away. So just keep that in mind. It's not necessarily about what it is you're delivering, it's about how you deliver it. And this is the thing about this sort of technical Zoom age, which is you must also figure out that although that I'm speaking to a laptop, I'm speaking to people. And that's the most important aspect of it. So learn and figure things out about speaking to group. And that's why I think it's so important that you've got your camera on, so I can see people and you can read body language and see how they're interacting, because, I've got like 10 to 15, 20 different people, and I'm looking at you all at the same time, which is quite one of the more amazing things about doing stuff in this environment, is that you can engage with a group full of people in a very efficient way. But anyway, I digress. So always start a deck with one of the key takeaways and the key to this engagement. And the engagement that I use is a term more about campaign. So I don't really use terms like activity or campaign or performance. I call them engagements. So an engagement could be a year long, it could be a month, but whatever we're doing is this engagement. The key to this engagement is taking our content and evolving them into ads. And that's one of the big things that a lot of people don't do, is taking really good content and making ads from it. So again, from a strategic point of view, this is the most amount of information I'll ever put in a slide. So just keep that in mind. Whenever you have text, if you want to do that, have two versions. Have a version that's light for presentations and have a version that you can then hand out an email to follow up. All right. And this again is for a work environment and from an agency client environment. So the strategy that we always work to whenever we do anything is 80% optimization, 20% build. Now, what I mean by that is 20% is putting the bricks up and 80% is doing the central heating, the furniture, painting the walls, all that sort of stuff. And that's the main thing that we try to do with all our activity. Once you build a good structure, there's very little reason to be able to rebuild it. But what you then do is you creative test. So looking different ads, like I spoke about earlier, against each other. Different copy. By copy, I mean the text on the ad itself. Optimize budget. This area is working well, this area isn't. KPI calibration. Are we working to the KPI that we need to? Performance is great, but are we working to the KPI? And are we consistently thinking about the KPI? Ad refresh. Are we constantly looking at the data? Are we looking at frequency levels? Are we looking at tiredness? Are we looking at engagement rate? All these different aspects into the ads itself. And the most important thing, right? Commercial link back. It doesn't matter, and this is one of the biggest things I used to always tell my teams when I was working in agencies. I don't care if you're making me 10 quid for every £1 you spend on your Google, if the business is tanking. Doesn't matter how well you do on Google, how well you do on Facebook, how well you do on your performance marketing. If the business's revenue isn't going up, it doesn't matter how well you do, they're getting rid of you. So you've always got to keep that in mind. It's one of the biggest things when I'm recruiting for staff coming in that no one understands is commercial link back. Understanding what does what we do mean for the actual commercials of the brand for the agency. Does us spending 10K on ads and making 100 grand according to Facebook actually generate profit for the business? If it doesn't, you need to think about the KPI. And that's the most important thing. And you'll also find that it will work other ways. Your performance could be doing shit, pardon me. Your performance could be doing poorly. You could be performing very poorly. And what would happen is if you look at the numbers of the client, revenue is still quite stable, revenue is growing, and you'll find that actually, okay, what we may think is bad isn't necessarily bad for the overall climate of the company itself. So commercial link back is a very, very important thing. When we look at the build side of things, so obviously creating our different campaigns, and campaign is the word that I use for the actual entities we do to create that houses all our targeting our ads. So the campaign, not in terms of like the traditional marketing sense, but a campaign in terms of the actual term we use for Google and Facebook for anything that houses our ads. Approval processes, remember, this is a big thing no matter what. If you're ever worried about tone of voice, of how you're being perceived in a brand, ask. Always. A client, a manager, a team member is never going to give you a hard time for linking back to them going, I'm going to put this live, or what do you think about this? Always look for feedback, always. And if you're in an environment that doesn't allow you to give feedback, let alone take feedback, then you need to consider what kind of environment you are, because that isn't, to me, a positive environment. Feedback is the most important aspect of developing in a team, and you need to get yourself used to somebody telling you that you're not very good at your job, because if you can't take that very well, then you never grow. You need to be able to completely stripped of everything that you have, of all your integrity, of all of your ego, and being told that you're not good at what you do. If you can handle that, but then also listen of how you can get better, you'll go everywhere. That's again is something to keep in mind for personally and from a professional point of view. Another thing about creating audiences is research and persona mapping. So by persona mapping, what I mean is taking information that we have from our clients or soon to be clients and using their data to be able to map creatives and targeting. So knowing what they know about their clients and not trying to reinvent a new audience, take advantage of what we already know about brands. So this is basically how we run our content and ads to brands. This is our strategic funnel, starting very much from the top all the way to the bottom, right? And the top being cold, for cold users, and the bottom being very warm. And warm meaning how close they are to the brand. The warmer a customer is to the brand, the more that they've engaged, or if not purchased. I would class somebody who's purchased from a brand as super warm. But as you can see from the top to the bottom, this is how we will start to engage our activity. So very at the top of the funnel, unengaged users, people that have yet to interact with the digital property. So that's anybody who's not seen an email, who's never gone on our socials, who's not gone on the website, any of those types of people at the top of the funnel. And then as you start to get further down the funnel, it gets hotter and hotter. So you have unengaged, people who visited the website, people who follow our socials, all the way to sale. Now, the reason why we've mapped this out is because it's important that we engage and communicate to audiences and consumers based on where they are in the funnel. And it looks like this. So as you can see, from the coldest to the warmest, you can start to see the type of content that we push. So at the very top of the funnel, we're not pushing anything to do with the product. We're pushing aspirational. We're pushing influence at the gym. We're pushing lifestyle. We're trying to get the consumer to think that this brand actually engages with what they do in their life. That's what we're trying to create at that top of the funnel. We're trying to create a bit of trust. We're making sure that when the consumer goes through their day on their socials and they see one of our ads, they think, oh, I can do that. Oh, I've done that. Or I've got similar interest to that. And you're creating a connection with the brand. And once you create a connection, negative or positive, it's very difficult to break that in this digital world. So it's important that as with everything, your first impression is your best impression and the only chance you'll get to make a very accurate reputation of the brand. So we want to make sure that the content at the top is the best at making sure we sell the brand, not the product. But then as we go down the funnel, you can start to see we can get away with pushing a lot more product specific activity. So further down the funnel, if you look at, let's say, warm, we can just use UGC native. It's clear that all we're doing here is selling boxing gloves. It's not very clear what we're trying to sell at the top. If you look at the gentleman with the speed bag, you could look at that and you wouldn't actually know what we're trying to sell. That's the main point. We're just telling the brand here. But as you get further down the funnel, it's very clear what we're selling. We're not selling grass on that picture, we're selling that trainer. We're not selling the tank top, we're selling the boxing gloves. And this is why it's so important to think about, especially from a social point of view, paid social, which is what I do. It's so important to understand where a user is in their purchase journey to you and what kind of content to hit them with, because that's what's going to lead to your conversion rate at the end. So these are some of the ads that we work with, that we've created with the Everlast team themselves. So we would go there. One of the things that we do, and I implore my staff members to do, is to take data and then go to the brands themselves and help them with their content. So you can see here what we want to do is looking at activity with that. I've got a specific notion in mind. So the ad on the left, the TikTok ad, the first one on number 1. Number 2 was specifically on Instagram, selling that shoe directly. Number 3 was sending people awareness of the YouTube series that we've got out there. So you can start to see how the creative changes in between what we want to do. And again, the most important things to keep about when it comes to creative is sell the story without sound first. If you can sell it without sound, then that means that you've gone to a winner with creative, except TikTok. I'm sure you've all got TikTok accounts. I'm sure you're trying to keep your screen time down, but unless you uninstall that TikTok, that screen time ain't going down anytime soon. So with TikTok, it's all about sound. So these are all the different aspects that we're trying to push when it comes to creative as well. And then obviously the most important thing whenever it comes to activities, we can do really good ads, we can do really good creative, we can optimize our activity, but if the landing page we're sending users to isn't optimized, then it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what we do. If we're bringing people to the website and they're not converting, this is where you then have to have the skills to be able to look at why they're not converting. What page are we sending them to? Why is it? And do we need to look at changing things around? Is the time speed too long for loading? Do we have too much going on? Is the product not visible? Have we created continuity between the ad and the site? And by that I mean, are we showing the ads that they're seeing displayed on the website as well? Because there's nothing worse than seeing an ad that's promoting red shoes, landing on a website, and all you see is white shoes. So the entire journey of the user is so important in everything you do. It's not just the creative or the ads or the shiny and the cool stuff. It's the nitty gritty that leads to conversion as well. And then looking at forecasting, this is the type of stuff that you want to do. So you have 3 areas of scaling in what we do. This is what we do: learning, driving, and scaling. So your learning is where every activity that we push has a period of learning. Learning is where you try to look at what's working, what isn't, and you push ads that show sign of positive and try to reduce the ads that show sign of negative performance. And then when you have that done, you can go to scaling, which is where you actually invest in the areas that you've seen go forward. So you'd go from learning, then you would drive more spend into the positive areas, looking for the areas that have got the most positive performance. And then once you've done that and you started to understand that these are the key areas that I'm going to be pushing spending, and that's when you scale. And the most important aspect of scale is being able to have a benchmark KPI and a KPI that isn't just that increases month on month, but a benchmark KPI that you have a conversation with the client to say, what is the minimum that we can work towards as a return in order for us to keep pumping spend? And if you work with a good client, they'll turn around to you and go, right, Herdy, we're going to need as a minimum £4 for every £1 we spend on marketing. And as long as you're at £4, you can keep spending what you want. And that's when you scale. But in order to get to this level, you have to learn, drive, and then scale. And then most important, as I said to you, reforecast. Go through the same things. And then just finally, this is some of the stuff that we do when it comes to reporting as well. So back in the day when I was doing digital marketing, a client would be happy with an email and a meeting once a month. But now those days are way behind us, and the client wants to know exactly what's happening at any minute of the time. So we work with Google's program called Looker Studio, and what we do is some of these dashboards together that link from our ad serving platforms. And the beauty of doing that is that this data is live. So a client can go at any point in time and see what they're doing on the day and how they're spending and how they're performing. And this is good and bad, because as you can imagine, if you have a day where performance isn't great, my phone's going to be off the handle. So there's good and bad aspects to that as well. And then that's it, from a question point of view. So you can see how we do our main decks. I think the one key takeaway, if I actually stopped sharing, the one key takeaway that I would say when it comes to decks is have one key point per slide. Don't put 3 or 4 different points on one slide, and try to think that you work for the sun, right? And by that, I don't mean anything politically challenging, by the way, but I don't mean like hack people's phones. But what I mean is every title and every headline on your slide needs to be clickbait. So you need to have one big title for each slide to make sure and say that that's what the client will take over. And by that, an example could be, let's say you're putting a piece of data together, and instead of putting all the data into one slide, break that slide down. Don't be afraid to have quantity when it comes to decks. But your one slide could be, our performance in UK has grown 30%. That's your title. And everything to do with that title must be in that slide only, nothing else. And that's the best way to be able to deliver information. If I just stand here and spit at you with loads of different facts and figures, it'll never sink in. But if I have key milestones, it's the best way to deliver information. I'm conscious that I spoke quite a bit. If should right on time. So I think let's have some questions. Maybe I'll try to get through more. Unfortunately, I do have a 3 o'clock, George, just to let you know. Okay. So I've got a hard stop, unfortunately.
All right. Okay. Let's fly through them then as quick as we can. Zamina, you've got your hand raised.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you for presenting that. I think that was very insightful. My question is not related to the deck, however. I just wanted to get a general idea on, as an agency, because you work with different kinds of clients. So what percentage of turnover would you look at when working with those clients? So what percentage of their turnover? Is it, in the, let's say, hundreds, or does it have to be above 100, yearly, monthly? So what kind of percentage do you look at?
Do you mean what kind of clients I partner with based on their turnover?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's a good question. As a rule of thumb, this is us, we work with clients that turn over at least $1 million a year. Right. And the reason why I say that is, in a business point of view, and I've been very lucky that I've had a few businesses, in the business point of view, when you get to that level of turnover, you've had to have gone through a range of different problems to solve to get you to that stage, to get you to that milestone. And the most important problem or solution that they've gone through tends to be that they've run digital marketing, or they've ran performance marketing, they've run Google ads, they've run social ads. Because I'm not in this business to convince clients to do ads on social or Google. That's not our customer base. That's not our ICP. Our customer base are individuals that already run ads, but have 2 problems. A, they can't scale them, or B, they don't trust the people that are doing them. So when you get to that £1 million turnover, although it sounds quite arbitrary and a bit naive, we can make an assumption that they've gone past that realm, and we can start to have more conversation about scaling, etc., etc.
Amazing, thank you.
Perfect. Jay, you've got your hand raised.
Yeah, my question's about the soft skills. Basically, what would you say would be like the optimal way to push soft skills to an employer? Because like the reality is, like, I'm on this course with very little work experience, but I feel like I do have a lot of soft skills that like do work in the sense of like an interview way or a presenting way. So how would you push down to an employer to get your foot into an interview?
Tell me one of your soft skills.
I'm a self-learner.
How? How have you proved that?
I taught myself coding for a year.
Can you prove that?
Yeah.
Well, there you go. You've just done it. I think the key thing.
How would I prove that then, if you know what I mean?
Well, most staff are gonna ask exactly what I've just had this interaction. So it doesn't have to be a scary conversation. The conversation is going to be either in fewer words or less or more words. And the way to do that, if it was me, let's just talk about you. If you were coming to me and you're going to prove to me that you're a self-learner, yeah, what I would want to see in the most practical way is something that you've put together. It's something that
Oh,
you've
right,
coded.
okay, yeah.
Yeah, the thing
Yeah,
is,
yeah.
this is why this, and I know I keep saying it, the DEX is the most important thing. I can't take your word for it, and I don't
Yeah.
want to take your word for it. So anything that I can hold, see, that you can send, that's tangible, is the most important thing. Give me another one of your soft skills.
I'm determined, motivated.
Yeah, so again, that's a hard one, which is a good one I'm glad you
Yeah.
said that. So how would you show that you're determined and motivated? If it was me, and I'm telling you, and this is where you need to have a think and go, do I actually want to feel a little bit uncomfortable inside, but I'm doing something that nobody else is doing? Or am I happy to go to status quo? Because if I was you and I want to show that I'm a determined person to a potential employee, I would print out all the different job roles that I've been applying for. Honestly, I'd be like,
Oh, right,
this
okay,
is what I've got. Or I would go an in depth about how much you know about the person sat in front of me.
Okay, yeah.
That's one of the things that never happens. And that shows so many things straight away. If you were to come to me and go, oh, I actually Googled you, or I looked in your LinkedIn and you've done this, I saw this, I found that, I had a few questions about this, then about, oh, wow, this person's actually done their homework. And never be afraid to ask questions in an interview. That's another thing. And remember, try to interview the person that you're being an interview for. Flip it. So conscious that I've gone through a few things, but I hope I've answered your question there.
Yeah, that was great, thanks.
Perfect. We had a question earlier in the chat as well about the people on your team and what roles they do.
Yeah, it's a good question. So I have 3 members of staff in my team, and then Dan has 2 members of staff in his team. And in all honesty, they manage the accounts. My role now is to speak to clients directly, to work on a pipeline, to pick up the phone if something goes wrong or if they want to ask me something. But you know, my team is the bread and butter of what we do. They're probably smarter at everything they do than I am. And you've got to keep that in mind is my whole thing is that I want to recruit people that are smarter or show more determination than I do. And if you can show aspects of that, then you'll walk into a role. Don't be afraid to try to show someone how good you are at a certain subject, because it's quite an important aspect and quite a good trait as well.
Perfect. And really quickly before you jump off here,
Well, don't worry. I'm just going to buy a little bit of time. I'm just conscious it's quite important. So just a moment. I'm just going to tell one of the team members that I'm going to be late. Go on, George. Sorry.
Oh, perfect. That's fine. Well, does anyone have any other questions? I was just going to ask Herdy if the guys wanted to find you or reach out to you after the session. Is there anywhere they can do that? Maybe LinkedIn?
Yeah, you've got my LinkedIn, or drop me an email as well. I think, George, you might have those details as well. So yeah, my LinkedIn or my email, feel free. Like I say, I am actively looking for people to join the team, and more importantly, people that don't have any skills, somebody that I can mold. So if you're up for it, let us know and drop us a note.
Amazing. Zamina, you've got your hand raised. Do you want to ask something?
Yeah, just another question. Sorry. Do you know, regarding the soft skills, just wanna expand on that a bit if possible. So
Yeah.
when it comes to soft skills, right, you've mentioned the skills such as, for example, public speaking could, for example, be, I don't know, soft skill, or if you would rather say this is a hard skill. What about negotiation skills, for example, or persuasion skills as well, or
Very good.
presentation skills? What kind of skills do you think those are? Are they more hard skills? Are they more soft skills? For example, I'm just going to give you an example of myself. Like I like presenting to the public and stuff, and I like speaking about stuff that I'm passionate about, such as influencer marketing, social media, because that's the field that I've been in. But what happens sometimes is, especially when you're presenting to big clients, like I get stuck. and my words just don't come out, or I'll be speaking a
Yeah.
different language because I speak different languages. I'll all of a sudden be saying
Yeah.
German, for example, and people are like,
Yeah.
you know, what tips can you give on that to just maintain that pace that you're going and just maintain like a very steady pace when you're speaking to the public?
So it's a very good question. There's actually two things that I've actually done to stop that. And the first is, it sounds really strange, but there's tools that allow you to read quicker, right? And one of the tools is, and I can link it, but if you look at, there's an extension on Google, but there's a tool essentially that allows you to increase your reading speed. So if you just Googled that, you'll find a lot of tools. And what that allows you to do is make your brain start to function a lot quicker. And the greatest respect, I think that's where your issue lies, is that you're not able to take the pressure off yourself to be able, for your brain to be able to handle in a normal situation. So number one would be try to learn how to read really quick, because that means that your brain's able to digest a lot of information really quick. That's number one. And then number two, and I mentioned to the gentleman earlier, and this is where you determine whether or not how much you actually want to improve yourself. I actually used to do acting classes to stop this. So there's actually photos in my dad's house and my mum's house from newspapers of me doing acting, joining plays, putting myself out of comfort zone. And that is what exactly has stopped me from, and I had the same problem, because I'm bilingual too, but that's how I was able to be passionate. And like I said this to Georgia, and this is not me showboating, but I'm 100% more better at speaking in front of people than I am even in a Zoom. If you think I'm all right now, you should see what I'm like in person. I'm excellent at speaking to people in front of them. I'm very captivated by people's emotion. And the reason I was able to do that is because I did acting classes and I was able to read really quickly. So those are my 2 points they should do.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that.
All good.
Jade, you've got your hand raised.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, I guess, what your advice is, or what you think the one kind of most important soft skill or that kind of skill would be useful to be able to demonstrate to a potential future employer, like if somebody is coming to you today, maybe with not much experience, kind of lived experience in marketing. What do you want to see from them?
I think the most important thing, and it's hard because I'll be honest, I would be looking for more than one soft skill if I'm trying to look. But if it was one, I think the willingness to learn is the most important thing. That will set you above anything else. As an employer, it's easy for me to keep somebody on that's not performing when I can see that they've got a willingness to learn and learn, not a quick or slow pace, but just learn. I think that's the most important thing. And the best way to demonstrate that is to show things you've learned. You know, you can say that you've got a willingness to learn, but show me. You know, and that's a lot of things with these soft skills, is that I've got, I'm a confident public speaker, or, I may be great at negotiating, or I'm confident in speaking in front of people. I can handle multiple things. Show me an example that you've done that. So if you're telling me that, you've got willingness to learn, have you picked up a new skill? Have you, have you trying to learn a new language? Are you in the journey to learn something? That's an important aspect. It's a good question.
Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. Herdy, what kind of roles are you looking for on your team?
So we're quite unique that we just call them performance executives. So that role is basically somebody who can work under our team to start to learn and get the ropes with all our platforms that we work on. So Snapchat, Pinterest, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and eventually start to on the journey to manage accounts themselves, as everybody do. So everybody in the team started as a junior, and now they're better than me.
And Samina's just popped in the chat there. Are you looking for influencer marketing roles or social media specific roles?
Do you know what? I'll be very honest, Amina, we're not. So one of the reasons why we're good at what we do is we stick to what we know. So they're essentially paid social roles or paid search roles, and that's it. Yeah. And you can get the roles are remote. Yeah, they're all remote. So we've got an office in Manchester and we've got an office in London. But again, I'll say probably not something that we've not got on. I should shoot off soon. But one of the things I'm a big advocate for working in an office environment. And the reason why I say that is I've worked for years in an environment where I've been stuck on myself. And I was so thankful that when I was learning, it was mandatory to be in an office, because I picked up everything I know based on the people around me. And you're just not able, especially in a work environment, there's so many tiny nuances of knowing when somebody looks like they've got F off written on their face, or knowing when somebody needs help, or knowing where somebody looks like they could become a friend and a colleague. There are so many skills that we're just not picking up anymore. So it's important that that we utilize that. So I always ask that you should be in the office at least 3 days of the week. And most of the time it's Monday and Friday that most people aren't in. So surprise, surprise.
Amazing stuff. Thank you so much, Herdy. I'll let you shoot off now.
No problem. I really enjoyed it. But like I said, if anybody has any more questions, I'm sure George will follow up with some sessions. But yeah, I hope you find it useful.
Perfect. Amazing. Thanks, lovely. Take care.
Cheers.
Bye now. See you later.
Oh, I love that guy. Okay, so my lot, we're gonna take a break. We'll take a 20-minute break, so or just over. We'll come back at 3:30 in my mentor group, and I'll just post that in the Slack channel again for you all. All right.
Same for mine as well. So 3:30 back in our Zoom call. Thank you.
I'll follow their lead. We'll do 3:30 as well for my group, and I'll see you back there for the rest of the tasks.